How's it going, everyone? My name is Nori Plays. Welcome to a little bit of a something different video. I made a community post last night for some of you that wanted to know how to record and maybe potentially edit like Markiplier. So in this video, I hope to thoroughly guide you through that for the entire process. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm in OBS and this doesn't look the same as most of yours, I bet. And I'll explain why. So if you head to settings here and go to output, then go to recording, you can see all the settings I'm using. So the recording path, yes, all of that. So let me quickly explain the format. What format you should be using to record without having much issues. I recommend using the format MKV. This is so that you can remux your recording and still have it be clean, because sometimes when I was recording MP4 formats, I had recordings just get corrupted and be unusable. So you want to try use MKV, and then I'll show you how to remux as well. The encoder, you can use AMD has its own one. I don't know what it is, but if you do know, put it down in the comments below. I believe the newer AMD GPUs have... GPUs are graphics cards, by the way. So if you have an AMD graphics card, you're probably not going to have this same video encoder as I do here. You're going to have something else. The newer AMD cards have AV1. The newer NVIDIA cards also, I believe, support NVON, but that's for streaming. So for video encoding, you want NVENC HEVC over the NVENC H.264 because it gives you a higher quality recording. And if you feel like you can't record in this way with your graphics card, set that to H.264 if you feel like you cannot run it. Then in your encoder settings, I used to use CBR until I found out that CQP is actually a hell of a lot better, because CBR, imagine like a recording quality being flat. You won't have headroom, and you won't have like, and it won't use less bitrate if there's room to not use less bitrate, to use less bitrate, sorry. So what you want to do is CQP, because what CQP does, if you set the level to around 20 for this, what it does is if it needs more bitrate, it will use more bitrate. If it needs less bitrate and doesn't need as much bitrate, it will use less. So it is very nice. It gives you the best quality when you need it, and it's really good for moving images, like in games. So CQP is probably where it's at. I'm not gonna lie. I've used CBR for so long until I saw the difference CQP actually makes. If you do bear in mind though that the lower you set this number here, 20, the higher your file size will be, because it's trying to use more bitrate. It sets kind of like a minimum and the highest bitrate by itself as you record. So setting it to 20, maybe even 24 if you feel like that's still too much space, is probably the best idea. Keyframe interval at 2 seconds. What this does is it records... I'm pretty sure it does like every other frame or something like that, just so that it runs a lot smoother. So set that to 2. The preset, I set it to the slowest, best quality, but again, if you feel like your recording is really lagging behind, set that to slower. I wouldn't really go lower than that. If you really are keen on getting that quality, I wouldn't go lower than slower. Tuning, high quality. Okay, multi-pass mode is also up to personal preference, but I do 2 passes. So as you're recording, it's checking previous frames to see if there's any artifacting or any glitching and things like that. So you kind of want to set it to 2 passes if you can, but do know that this is really intensive, and sometimes single pass is enough, but in this case, we're using 2 passes. If you're curious about my PC, I'm using an RTX 3060 Ti with this setup. If you have something like a 20 70, I guess you can still do this. Same with a 1660. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Profile should be on main, GPU 0, max frames on 2. Don't think about it too much, it's just what that is, okay? Then once you go to video, most of you will have this set to your one screen resolution, which is 1920 by 1080, or if you're using a 1440p monitor, 2560 by 1440. So what Markiplier does is he actually doubles the screen estate by doubling the width. So if you double the 1920 part of the width and you go into calculator or whatever the width of your monitor is, so 1920 times by 2, you can see is 3840. What this does is it literally just doubles your screen onto the OBS window. Make sure you set your output scaled resolution to the same as your base, because otherwise what's going to happen to your recording is it's going to record in a much lower resolution and everything's going to look blurry and it's going to be a mess. So you don't want to use that, and you want to set it to 60 FPS. Okay, so what else is there? There's also this. So this is where your colors come in. It's probably also very important. And your process priority. Make sure your process priority is on above normal so that your PC still prioritizes recording the video no matter what. Even if you have a game running, it will still prioritize OBS more. You want that for the smoothest recordings, because otherwise, I've had games that literally like destroy your PC. And if you don't set this to above normal, your recording will look super laggy and it won't look good. So you want to set that to above normal. Renderer, DirectX 11, that's going to be default. Color format you can mess with as well. If you want really good colors, but even my PC can't handle this at this resolution, you want to set that to a different value. There's like a 440 here, but it's really heavy on the PC at this resolution, so I don't recommend it unless you have a top-of-the-line system. Color space, 709 is probably the best one, and you want the full color range. The bottom two don't matter at all, so there you go. That's also fine. Okay, so the next thing I want to cover is, you remember how we set it to MKV? What you'll be doing after every single recording is remux your recording so that it's an MP4. And then from there, you can use it in your editing software. And I'll show, in this video, I'm showing how to use it in Premiere specifically, because that's what most people tend to use to edit their videos. Anyway, so that's all the settings out of the way, I believe. Also, in terms of audio, you can see I have a mic here and I have system audio. If you go to advanced properties, you want to record in 2 tracks. One track's going to be your microphone and one track's going to be your game audio. I'll show why when we get into Premiere, but this is so that your audio is split. So your microphone's on one track and your game audio is on another. And then you go into settings, output, recording, and set the audio tracks to 1 and 2. That way it will just record them separately, because if you have all of your sound on one track, it makes it very hard to edit once you're editing your video. So from here on forward, I don't think I missed a whole lot. You just want your face cam to be on one half, and you want your game to be on the other half. If you want this stats thing, you can go to view, and then I believe it's called status bar. Okay, it's not called status bar. It's stats right there, like this. And then what you do is just drag it into one of the corners or just dock it anywhere. This window is going to be really useful when you're recording, because the colors will change depending on how hard it is for your PC to record. If it's red, you're going to have to adjust your recording settings. Like I said, maybe do go back to CBR if this is too hard to run for you. or set the CQP level higher, or change the preset. But once you've remuxed your recording, so let's say I have my Amanda the Adventurer video that I just did. As you can see, I have the MP4 because I delete the MKV files when I record the videos. So let me find something, and I'm going to spoil it here, the series. Whoa, the series. Make sure you check that out when it comes out. Resident Evil 4. Alright, MKV. You can see MKV. If you open it, then you hit Remux, and then it will convert it to MP4. From there, I'm going to show you what to do in Premiere. So give me a second, and I'll cut right to it right about now. Now that we're in Premiere, you can drag any sort of recording that you've remuxed into this software. So give me a second, I'm gonna drag something in. Okay, here we go. So this is the alternative watch video that I did. Make sure you check that out as well. It's actually the video just before this one. But if I drag this in to Premiere really quickly. Come on, come on. Okay, see I've dragged it once, drag it twice. And then drag it onto your timeline. You'll notice something. You'll notice that it's in that recorded format where it's wide. How do you go about fixing that? First of all, drag your other one on top so that it looks like this, which is scary. Right click it and select unlink. So that's going to unlink that second one that you put in. Select both of the bottom audio sources and delete them. So there you have your video twice. You can unlink this as well because we're going to be doing something. Go to your sequence settings and change your frame size to 1920 by 1080. You'll see that this messes things up a lot, but we're going to fix it up right now. If you see the anchor point, you can see the anchor points in the middle. That's because when you're recording in that width, the middle's literally gonna be where this line is. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? So you want to set that middle to be on your face cam for this top layer here. To do that, you need to take away 960 from 1920, which is also 960. As you can see, my entire face is on the screen. Then what you do is nest. What this does is it crops it for you and ignores the rest of the footage. And we're gonna call this face cam. Now if you press the eyeball and turn this off, you can see that it's just the face cam. You can like scale it, you can move it around, you can do whatever you want to do with that. So let's make it invisible. And then for the game, you actually add 960 to the anchor point, which is 2880. As you can see, that perfectly fits the game into your frame again. So you want to nest that as well and call it gameplay. From here on, A1, this layer right here is your microphone because you've set that to track 1. And track 2 is your game. So as you can see, I'm going to set up the face cam right now. If we go to effects and type crop, now we can actually crop our face cam however we want and then scale it down using a transform tool. What the transform tool will do is add motion blur and things like that when you want to scale and make it look super smooth. But first we have to crop it to the level where we kind of want it. So let's crop it. I do it usually up to the shoulder, like 2 times shoulder length right here. Same on the left, like that. And then the top is fine, so we just cropped a lot of the bottom, kind of like this. And then after this, we add transform to this same top layer. We're not messing with the gameplay layer yet. It's only the face cam layer. From here, you want to set your anchor point. You can see the anchor point is all messed up. So you want to move your anchor point so that the other ones matched up with the top corner. I'll explain why. And then you want to put it into your top left corner. Usually it's the top left. Otherwise, you align it to whichever corner you need to scale from. Because once we apply scale, you can see it scales it from that point. So this is how you do the really motion blurred zooms that most big creators do. You also want to uncheck shutter angle and then set your shutter angle to either 180 or 360 depending on how blurry you want it. I'm going to set it to 360 just to exaggerate it and show you guys how it looks like when you scale with this transform tool. So if we add a keyframe now and then go forward about 10 frames, I'd say is fine. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can just use your arrow key to go along. Right and left arrow key goes along each frame. It doesn't show it right now because of how long the recording is. And then if we set it to 150, you'll be able to see that blur right there. And it smoothly scales it. Now, if you want smoother transitions, because that was a very boring transition, you select both keyframes. So if you do this, so that you zoom in, you can see your keyframes. Select both of them, right click, ease in, and that will ease the both of them. You can see it kind of did something, but it didn't do it enough. And then you drag that bottom one right there. You can see the handle. I'll probably zoom in when I edit this. You can edit that handle so that you get a curve. What this means, what this curve means, is that it goes very quickly and then slows down. You can do it also the opposite way, where it slowly ramps up into it. So you see that? If I bring it out even more, you'll be able to see it even more. You see that? It's a very, it goes quick and then slows down. The transition. Also, if you're not careful with placing this, then it could mess things up as well. You see how it messes things up? Usually you want it to be about 30-ish frames, I'd say. So, but you can also mess with it like that and just get a feel for things. See that? It goes really quick and then slow. That's kind of how I do most of my zooms. Most of the time though, I don't even use this. So if we get rid of the keyframes, all I do is just cut. Because once we have our game like this, we can right click it and link it again. What this will do is it links all the tracks so that when you press C and cut, it will cut all of the tracks. And then from there, you cut again and then unlink it like this. And then what you do is you can do the zoom. And then what you do is just change the scale 65 or 70 like that. And then as you can see, once you play the video, it will do that zoom. You can do that for your game as well. So that is how you edit that. How I do most of that. Then comes, let me think. Shortcuts. Say you want to chop something out. So you hit Control X to cut out a segment. Like that. You do a chop, cut out a segment. And then I've set it up so that when I press Shift F2, it closes that gap. How you do that is you go into keyboard shortcuts here. And then if you type in gap, and then under sequence, it will say close gap. If you set that to a shortcut, then it'll do what I just did. It'll just close each gap. And that helps a lot so that you don't have to drag the footage around. Or say you make a bunch of cuts like this. And you don't want to just move it like that because it's long. So you just press Shift F2 and it just puts it all together like that. It's really convenient. Also, I've seen a lot of creators use these subtitles that float around. I've only figured out one way to do this, and that is if you have your text, like subtitle here, hello mates. I'll use as an example. Then we open this up, set it to the middle so that we can align it. If you hold control while you're moving your text as well, you can line it up with the middle. I've seen so many people try subtitles, but they're not actually properly lined up in the middle. It's actually really funny to look at. And then what you do is add a stroke if you want one. In this case, we're going to do a black stroke, and then we're going to add some shadow too. Kind of like that. And then obviously you pick your font. So I'm going to pick a pretty weird font here as an example. Okay, so now what you do, this is a paid plugin, but there's probably other cheaper plugins. It's called Sapphire. So if you go s_shake, this is the plugin most editors use for this shaky effect. There's also drop shadow. You can add drop shadow to things. There's also transitions with this. Did my Premiere just crash? Oh my god, it did as well. Okay. It happens. Not that often, but it happens. Okay, so there's our subtitle, right? And you want to make it float around. What you do is add s_shake to this text right here. I'm going to have to zoom in here. Yeah, so if you add... Wow, wait. Okay. I thought it was going to crash again. And this adds a whole new list of options. Now, if you press play with the default settings, you can see it shakes like crazy. Kind of don't want that. I'm going to mute the tracks as well. So to get rid of that massive fat shake, set your amplitude down and set your frequency to 1. Now you can see it's a lot more smooth. It's not as obnoxious. Now you can probably set your frequency up higher. See, it just moves it around very nicely. It's just nice to look at compared to if the text was just there like that. Let me think about what else. If you wanted to edit your audio now, because you've got it on separate tracks, if you go to audio track mixer, you can set the volumes here. And if you press this small arrow, it's very hard to see. If you press that small arrow, this is where you add all your filters. To your mix track right here, I usually add a dynamics with a limiter on it. This is so that I don't ear rape people, and it stays at a max of -1 decibels for the whole thing. So that it doesn't peak. My game and my microphone doesn't reach over -1 and just ear blast everyone. And then obviously you can set things up for your game. I'll leave links to a bunch of plugins down below, but the main one I sometimes use is OTT. What this does, it's a upward compressor and a downward compressor. So what this actually does is it brings all the quiet bits of the game up and all the loud bits of the game straight back down. And that is really useful if you're playing like a really atmospheric game and you want to bring up the loudness of the quiet and then the jump scares and the ear rape aspects of it down, and just so that everyone can hear all the details that you are hearing, because I know what it's like to be a phone user, or if you're using speakers, it also helps to do this upward compression and downward compression. I don't use it all the time, but it's always there to my use if I ever feel like I need to use it. So yeah, what else is there? There's also color correction, obviously. If I do the example again, I'm going to turn off the subtitles now that I've done them. If you want to color correct it now, what you'd have to do is literally go to Lumetri color, and then this is where you do your color correction. You add exposure, you add some contrast to your face, bring up the highlights, bring them down, Bring up the shadows, bring them down. Depends how you want it to look, right? It's all personal preference here. But be modest with it. Don't go crazy with it. Because otherwise it will look terrible. I've had many moments where it would just look absolutely terrible. So you give me some more color in my skin. So that is how you'd color correct the game as well. So sometimes games are really dark. This one's actually a great example. So if I enter the game here, I actually did this for my last video as well. You can see that the game is very dark and gritty, and I don't know, it's just not very easy to look at if you watched this on your phones. What I did is bring up the exposure a little bit, up the contrast so that you still get those shadows popping. Bring up the highlights a little bit, bring down the shadows, bring up the whites. There we go. You don't have to do a whole lot. Even this, I'd say, is too much. I'd lower the contrast and the exposure a little bit. But yeah, this is how I believe Markiplier and Lixion edit their videos and how he records his videos in OBS. I hope this was helpful in some way, shape or form. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if this was useful down in the comments below. Subscribe if you're new and smash the like button for me. Apart from that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.